For my end of the semester project, I decided to look a little bit into schizophrenia and what professionals believe the cause is. Schizophrenia is a disorder that affects a person's ability to think, feel, and behave clearly. More than 20 million people worldwide have schizophrenia. It seems like a lot when you hear 20 million people, but that's barely even 1% of the population. Each year, there's about 1.5 cases per 10,000 people. Many who suffer from schizophrenia also suffer from other mental health issues. These can be depressive symptoms, post traumatic stress disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and even panic disorder. There are many different symptoms of schizophrenia, as I will discuss later, but there are three main types. Positive symptoms include hallucinations, delusions, unusual physical movements, and illogical thoughts. These can feel as real to a person with schizophrenia as it would for a real person to come in the room and speak with them. One individual described her hallucination by saying the room turned dark and people would distort and start to look demonic. Even I would start to look demonic. The negative symptoms can often be the worst. They lead to people dropping out of school, work, and leaving everything that matters to them behind. Negative can be explained as the lack of oomph in a better sense. It's the absence of motivation, interest, and overall drive. Cognitive symptoms can include trouble concentrating, focusing, taking in new information, and using that information. The brain begins to process information slower and the memory declines. One individual describes this as a traffic jam of everything going in and out of your brain, so it's like everything is always new and you don't remember the process. Schizophrenia has a wide variety of symptoms, and these can fall into several different categories. Behavioral symptoms can include social isolation, disordered behavior, aggression, agitation, compulsive behavior, excitability, hostility, repetitive movement, self harm, and lack of restraint. The cognitive symptoms include thought disorder, delusion, amnesia, belief that an ordinary event has special or personal meaning, belief that one's thoughts aren't one's own, disorientation, mental confusion, slowness in activity, and false belief of superiority. Those with schizophrenia can also experience many different moods, such as anger, anxiety, apathy. They can feel detached from themselves, have a general discontent, a loss of interest or pleasure in activities they once enjoyed. They can experience elevated moods, and they can also have inappropriate emotional responses. Psychological symptoms can include hallucinations, paranoia, hearing voices, depression, fear, and even delusions. There can also be symptoms within the speech, such as circumstantial speech, incoherent speech, rapid or frenzied speech, and speech disorder. There are also symptoms of fatigue, impaired motor coordination, lack of emotional response, and memory loss. Oftentimes, people don't even realize that they have schizophrenia, and most times they're misdiagnosed as bipolar. For some people, it can take years to realize that they even have a problem. Schizophrenia often also comes in the late teens or 20s. One individual named Michelle Hammer had spent years in high school thinking that her mother was out to kill her. The voices in her head kept telling her that her mother was going to get her. Michelle thought that this was just an issue with her mother, so she refused treatment. Once she left home for college, she thought that these thoughts would go away, but they didn't. She then began to think that her roommate was going to get her, and this made her realize that she had an issue. For most, the way to realize that there's an issue is to eliminate all other conditions. Unfortunately, there is no cure for schizophrenia. Although there is no cure, there are treatments such as antipsychotics that can help relieve some of the symptoms. These antipsychotics block the action of the dopamine, which in return helps reduce the psychotic symptoms experienced by the individual. The cause of schizophrenia is still a big question for scientists. It is said to be a combination of genetics, environment, altered brain chemistry, and brain structure. Over time, it has been hypothesized that glial cells might have something to do with schizophrenia. For a little bit of background information, oligodendrocytes are specialized glial cells that wrap themselves around neurons in the central nervous system. They're responsible for maintenance and generation of the myelin sheath that surrounds the axon. This enables fast impulse propagation. Astrocytes are another specialized glial cell in the central nervous system. These are physical and metabolic supports for neurons. They help with detoxification, guidance along migration, electrical insulation, and regulation of energy metabolism. In 2017, there was a study done by Dr. Stephen Alan Goldman and his team. This was a breakthrough on how schizophrenia occurs. Glial cells make up the supportive tissue in the brain. Their role is to facilitate communication between the other neurons located in the central nervous system. When the brain is formed during the embryonic stage, there are potential issues that can occur. During fetal development, glial cells form from glial progenitor cells. If there are any genetic faults in these cells, it can cause for dysfunctional cell activity such as schizophrenia. For a little bit of context, Dr. Stephen Goldman is a professor of neuroscience and neurology at the University of Rochester. He has an interest in cell genesis and regeneration in the adult brain, with a focus on the use of stem and progenitor cells both in modeling and treating demyelinating and neurodegenerative diseases such as schizophrenia. He has over 250 published papers. In 100 of these, he is first or second author. He also holds 30 patents in his field. In Dr. Goldman's study, he used mice. Within this, they implanted mice brains with human glial cells. These glial cells they used were formed from progenitor cells of humans with childhood onset schizophrenia. This type of model is called a chimia. It is because it's crossed human cells with mice cells. This allows for scientists to create a type of human brain network within living mice. During the study, they found that these dysfunctional cells did not create enough oligodendrocytes. This caused for not enough myelin to be produced. Without enough myelin being produced, there was a lack of the fatty layer around the nerve pathways in the brain. This was determined to be a significant contributor to the development of schizophrenia. It was also found that within these dysfunctional cells that the astrocytes did not develop properly. This led to underdeveloped and dysfunctional cells. It was also found that the white matter did not fully develop. Due to the astrocytes not fully maturing, these fibers did not fill out their normal domains. So this meant that there was some control in some synapses, while the others had no coverage. When comparing these two brains, it is clearly seen that the brain with schizophrenia has less white matter. White matter is important to improve the speed and the transmission of electrical nerve signaling. The lack of white matter can be seen as a significant contributor to the cause of schizophrenia. Dr. Goldman states that the inability of these cells to do their job, which is to help nerve cells build and maintain healthy and effective communication networks, appears to be a primary contributor to the disease. This study is far from done, according to Dr. Goldman. He has stated that he wanted to try to replace the defective glial cells with healthy ones to see if it's possible to reverse the progression of the disease.